Summer, 1966. Harlem. Two men locked eyes, their destinies on the verge of colliding. Frank Lucas, a young man with ebony skin and a gaze of steel, had just appeared on the street corner. Facing him stood Tango, a man whose shifty eyes betrayed a debt far heavier than his empty wallet. Suddenly, 5 point-blank shots tore into Tango's skull. This bold act was not merely the execution of a defiant debtor. It was a message, carved in lead and blood, sent to anyone who dared challenge Frank Lucas. By the 1970s, the Big Apple, rotted to the core by crime, pulsed to the rhythm of police sirens and gangland executions. In upscale neighborhoods and dark alleyways alike, one name was whispered in fear: La Cosa Nostra. Their circle was sealed shut, impenetrable to anyone who did not share their blood and their origins. The very idea that an outsider, let alone a black man, could ever rise to the top of this mafia pyramid seemed as absurd as seeing the Statue of Liberty dance the twist. And yet, a young man with ebony skin and boundless ambition was about to rewrite the rules of the game. His name was Frank Lucas. Based on his life, the award-winning film American Gangster was released in 2007. However, the film has often been criticized for its major departures from reality. While some of those criticisms are justified, the truth is even more striking. Frank Lucas was not the real American Gangster. That title belonged to another man. Shake it down tonight. September 9th, 1930. As the first winds of autumn swept across the cotton fields of North Carolina, a cry pierced the night. Frank Lucas had just been born, unaware that he was entering one of the darkest chapters in American history. The 1930s loomed like a merciless storm, sweeping away the dreams and hopes of millions. The Great Depression, a ravenous beast, devoured savings, shattered families, and carved an even deeper divide between those who had and those who had nothing. In this desolate landscape, the Lucas family fought for survival. Each day was a battle. Each meal, a victory wrestled from misery. The cotton fields, once symbols of wealth for white landowners, had become arenas of struggle against hunger and despair. Yet, in the heart of this adversity, a flame burned in young Frank's eyes. A fierce determination, an unbreakable will to rise above his condition. No matter the obstacles, no matter the price, Frank Lucas was determined to escape the fate society had written for him. But something terrible was about to happen. One seemingly ordinary summer afternoon would forever scar the soul of 6-year-old Frank Lucas. Sitting in his bedroom, Frank was suddenly torn from his innocence by a piercing scream. It was the voice of his 12-year-old cousin, filled with raw terror, echoing through the house. Driven by an instinct he did not yet understand, Frank rushed into the hallway. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his life. 5 hooded figures, like phantoms from a nightmare, surrounded his cousin. One of them pressed the barrel of a revolver into the boy's mouth. On the floor lay a gruesome necklace of blood-stained teeth, silent proof of what had already been done. A deafening gunshot froze time itself, and his cousin's body collapsed face first to the floor. Later, Frank would learn the reason for this barbaric act. His cousin had committed the unforgivable crime of looking at a white woman. That single violation of racial codes of the era had been enough to unleash the murderous fury of the Ku Klux Klan. That day, Frank did not just lose a member of his family. He lost a part of his innocence, replaced by a burning awareness of the injustice and cruelty of the world around him. As Frank grew older, the brutality of his childhood hardened into a fierce determination to rise by any means necessary. In the dark alleys of his troubled youth, he learned the art of theft, targeting the lost souls who staggered out of a local tobacco shop. Hoping to escape petty crime, He eventually found work as a truck driver. For a while, the open road seemed to offer him a way out, a fresh start. But fate, like a treacherous crossroads, was waiting just ahead. A passionate affair with his boss's daughter set his heart ablaze and ignited a firestorm in his professional life. When their secret came to light, it triggered a violent confrontation, turning the warehouse into an arena for their demons. In a moment of blind rage, Frank grabbed an iron pipe. Cold metal met flesh with a dull, sickening thud, the sound of his last hope for redemption dying. His boss's lifeless body lay at his feet, a silent witness to his fall. Panicked, his mind clouded with adrenaline, Frank emptied the cash register, taking $400, a pitiful consolation for a life in ruins. In one final act of desperation, he doused the building with gasoline and set it on fire, watching the flames consume what remained of his shattered dreams. Back in their modest home, his mother waited, her heart heavy with fear. Each night, she was haunted by two nightmares: her son behind bars, or worse, laying dead in some dark alley. Maternal love, mixed with raw terror, drove her to act. One evening, as Frank returned from yet another dangerous escapade, she found the strength to confront him. Her eyes glistened with restrained tears, her voice trembling with resolve as she gave him an ultimatum disguised as hope. New York.
Listen to me, my son. This is your chance. Over there, you can reinvent yourself. Become the man I know you can be.
At 16 years old, Frank left North Carolina for Harlem, carrying his old demons with him. The streets of New York, far from saving him, became the news stage for his crimes. (1973), Newark, New Jersey. The city was hit by a severe heroin epidemic. The sprawling housing projects were filled with overdose victims, and law enforcement struggled desperately to find a solution. Behind this new wave of addiction was a heroin brand that, until now, remained a mystery. The paper packets were marked Blue Magic. But no one knew where Blue Magic came from, or who was behind it. Across the Hudson River, Blue Magic had also taken a hold of New York City. In the early 1970s, it was estimated that there were around 500,000 heroin addicts in the United States, with 200,000 in New York alone. It was a massive problem. Dealing with the dealers effectively was nearly impossible. They were too numerous. Enormous amounts of heroin were being imported into the city, and many people were drawn in by the enormous profits that such crime could bring. It was a problem that seemed insurmountable. For this reason, the DEA was created in 1973, tasked with combating drug-related crime across the country. Their primary target in New York? The Mafia. Historically, the Mafia controlled 80% of the heroin trade. Heroin was shipped to the U.S. from Turkey via the notorious French Connection. The Mafia refined it in Marseille, France, before sending it to New York, often hidden in car compartments. When the U.S. government funded the destruction of the poppy fields in Turkey, it thought the heroin supply would be cut off forever. Yet, out of nowhere, Blue Magic flooded the market. Purer, cheaper, and more addictive than anything before. Now you see, New York had always been the main entry point for drugs before they were distributed to cities like Detroit and Chicago. But Harlem in the 1970s was the true epicenter of heroin distribution. Users came from all ages and backgrounds, and the effects of the drug spared no one. Finding the source of Blue Magic became an urgent priority for the police. In December 1973, New York police decided to start at the bottom of the chain and work their way up. They arrested two known distributors, Mario Perna and Tony Verzina, hoping these mafia middlemen would lead them to the man behind the heroin. When Perna and Verzina were arrested, they were in possession of a massive shipment of heroin destined for Frank Lucas. Frank was already on the police radar. Could he be the man behind Blue Magic? A subsequent search of Rosina's apartment gave the police concrete evidence linking the mafia to Frank. Documents found there mention Lucas, the wholesalers, their aliases, and even their real phone numbers. Under questioning, Perna and Rosina named Frank. It was the final piece of the puzzle the police needed. But in reality, they didn't truly know who Frank Lucas was. The story begins in Harlem 8 years earlier. At the time, Frank was just a small-time drug dealer from North Carolina who had followed his mother's advice and had been selling heroin in Harlem for 5 years. Rising from petty thief to street dealer, Frank was stunned by how much money heroin could generate, and he knew that if he could climb the ladder, he could earn even more. But first, he had to make a name for himself. Like every rising drug lord, that meant building a reputation on the streets. Frank fronted a kilo of heroin to a street thug named Tango for a deal. But when Frank came to collect, Tango didn't pay. Frank seized the opportunity he had been waiting for. Tango's death catapulted Frank up the power ladder. That kind of brutality attracts attention, especially from the big players of Harlem. And it didn't take long before Frank got his chance to move up. Harlem, 1966. Frank was playing pool in a club when Ice Pick Red, a notorious hitman, challenged him to a $1,000 game. But the stakes rose when Bumpy Johnson arrived, a legendary figure with deep connections to the Genovese crime family. Bumpy, Harlem's most powerful heroin dealer, had heard about Frank's reputation and wanted to see if he could beat Ice Pick. Frank accepted. He won the game, and with it, Bumpy's respect. You got real guts taking on Ice Pick like that. Most men wouldn't have dared. I know I could beat him, Mr. Johnson. I just needed a chance to prove it. No need, kid. You show me you've got what it takes to survive in this world. Stick with me, and I'll teach you how to do more than just survive. I'm ready to learn, Bumpy. Whatever it takes. Good. First lesson, son. In this business, respect is worth more than money. If you earn that, everything else will follow. It was a turning point in Frank's career as a heroin dealer, and it didn't take long for the heroin business to be revolutionized. Harlem, New York, 1970. 4 years after becoming Bumpy Johnson's right-hand man, the heroin kingpin died at the age of 62. Frank Lucas, once a petty thief turned dealer, now stood as the most powerful man in Harlem, and naturally took Bumpy's place in the mafia's supply chain. Heroin demand was exploding. 15,000 addicts lived in Harlem alone, addiction rates 12 times the national average. But after the police dismantled the French Connection, the mafia's steady heroin supply began to dry up. As supply fell, prices rose, and Frank's profits collapsed. Before long, Frank was deeply in debt to the mafia. Every rising dealer racks up debts. But according to some accounts, Lucas owed dangerous amounts. Wiretaps even captured Italian-American mobsters discussing killing him once the debt passed $300,000. The mafia was closing in. Frank desperately needed to pay what he owed and to find a new, reliable heroin source. Then, black magic appeared, and with it, everything changed. Frank began making more money than ever before. He ensured his customers would never be tempted by rival brands by increasing the heroin purity in his product. When addicts get a stronger, longer-lasting high, they always come back. That made Blue Magic the key to his empire. Even when heavily cut, it still outperformed the competition, and it made Frank incredibly rich. He was pulling in at least $1 million in cash every week. But Blue Magic came at a deadly cost, because its heroin content was far higher than what users were used to. Overdose deaths skyrocketed. Addicts couldn't handle the strength, yet they kept coming back because nothing else compared. By now, it was clear that Frank's operation was far bigger than the police had imagined. Blue magic spread beyond New York into New Jersey. Distribution was run by Frank's own family, 17-year-old nephew and his brother, Shorty Lucas. They called themselves the Country Boys. Their reputation for violence, fueled by Frank and Shorty, spread fear across New Jersey. By 1973, blue magic had transformed Frank's life. His fortune had exploded, nearly $50 million hidden in Cayman Islands accounts. He flaunted his wealth at Harlem's hottest club, Small's Paradise, notorious for extravagant spending and public displays of power. And that, of course, drew government attention. That's when Richie Roberts entered the picture. Roberts could see that Frank Lucas was making enormous amounts of money, but he still had no idea where blue magic was coming from. And so the hunt began. It's now 1974, and heroin overdoses are rising across the city. In response, Richie Roberts assembles a special group of investigators known as the Z Team to intensify the fight against Frank Lucas. They want answers. Where's the heroin being cut? How is it entering the country? And how is Frank able to control an operation of this scale? They examine every possible angle. To move forward, Roberts sends a sample of blue magic to a lab for analysis. Chemists quickly identify what sets it apart. Its purity is far higher than anything seen before. They're also able to trace its geographic origin. The results are unexpected. The heroin comes from Asia. This immediately gives investigators an idea of where the poppy seeds are located, but they still don't know how the drugs are getting into the United States. And at this stage, only one man has that answer: Frank Lucas. Roberts becomes determined to uncover the truth. In New York, both the Z Team and local police are closing in on Frank Lucas, but everyone is playing their cards close to the chest. In the end, it isn't Richie Roberts who arrests Frank first, but the New York authorities. January 18, 1975. Frank is at home with his wife Julie when New York police arrive with a search warrant. They are hoping to find enough evidence to arrest him. What they discover goes far beyond their expectations. Inside the house, they discover massive amounts of cash, mostly in $10 and $20 bills. Nearly $600,000 is seized. Frank Lucas and his wife are both charged. Julie is charged with obstruction of justice. Frank is charged with conspiracy to distribute heroin. By 1976, Frank Lucas is serving a 40-year prison sentence. Police hope the flow of cheap, powerful blue magic will finally dry up. But heroin is still flooding the streets, which means the person distributing black magic was not Frank. In New Jersey, Richie Roberts and the Z Team are still no closer to finding the source until they receive a tip. Intelligence reports say a shipment is coming from North Carolina, headed for an apartment in Newark. When the Z Team kicks in the door, they discover that Frank's family-run street gang is still fully operational. The bust leads to the seizure of heroin worth $10 million. And among those arrested is Frank's 17-year-old nephew, a member of the Country Boys. At the time, with that amount of drugs, a New Jersey judge was prepared to sentence him to life in prison. Faced with that reality, the young man starts talking. The information he provides adds 30 more years to Frank Lucas's sentence, bringing the total to 70 years, with almost no hope of freedom. That is when Frank Lucas decides to cooperate. According to the film American Gangster, he exposes a network of corrupt police officers and walks out of prison a free man. But the real story is very different. What the authorities truly want to know is this: where did blue magic come from? Who was the real man behind the tidal wave of suffering caused by this deadly drug? Desperate to regain his freedom, Frank tells them what they want to hear. He officially testifies that he traveled to Bangkok, Thailand, to connect with a major heroin supplier, and that he cut ties with the mafia in order to ship heroin directly from Thailand to the United States. Then, Frank keeps talking and talking, and his story becomes almost unbelievable. The route his heroine supposedly took to enter the United States is nothing short of astonishing. It's now 1972. The story begins 3 years before Frank Lucas's arrest. At this point, Frank is deeply indebted to the mafia and living in hiding, sheltered in a secret safe house. But against all expectations, an extraordinary opportunity presents itself. Frank meets a heroin importer who offers him the deal of a lifetime, a chance to make a fortune while cutting the mafia out of the equation entirely. Frank, of course, is eager to gain access to this new source. That source will become known as Blue Magic. It gives him independence from the Italian-American mafia. For the first time, he no longer needs to work with them. The quality of the product is so high that Frank can earn even more money. And it is at this point that Frank reveals the true mastermind behind Blue Magic, a dealer already in police custody, Leslie Ike Atkinson. In just 2 years, Frank Lucas becomes extremely wealthy. But ambition drives him further. He wants a promotion. When Ike Atkinson's right-hand man is imprisoned, Frank seizes the opportunity. He travels to Thailand, intending to make an offer he believes Ike cannot refuse. But Ike has always been weary of Frank. He never fully trusts him, and he refuses to give Frank any control within his organization. Ike wants him to remain nothing more than his Harlem distributor. It is a rejection Frank will never forget, and he knows it cost him millions of dollars. Now, inside the interrogation room, Ike is about to pay for turning his back on Frank. He is on the verge of revealing to investigators the astonishing truth behind Blue Magic, and the former U.S. Army Sergeant Major who ran the operation. Let's rewind to Vietnam, 1968. The war is still raging when retired Sergeant Atkinson sees an opportunity. Alongside a former military colleague, Herman Jackson, he devises a plan to supply the United States with high-quality heroin. Ike and Jackson purchased cheap heroin from the poppy seeds of the Golden Triangle, Laos, Burma, and Thailand. From there, the drugs are smuggled onto U.S. military bases aboard military aircraft. Slowly but steadily, Atkinson builds his network by exploiting soldiers returning to the United States on leave. The U.S. Army, overwhelmed by the war effort, pays little attention. But after 4 years, authorities begin to suspect that heroin is entering the country through American military bases. They know that soldiers or people connected to the military are involved. But for years, no one knows who Atkinson is. Exactly as he intended. As military customs inspections tighten, the operation becomes more creative. During the Vietnam War, soldiers often carried small, lethal duffel bags known as AWOL bags, which contained a hidden compartment beneath a false bottom. These compartments could conceal up to 700 grams of pure heroin. Ike develops even more sophisticated smuggling methods, using film canisters, soldiers wearing leg casts, and an expanding network of at least 50 close associates and hundreds of soldiers. He supplies clients all along the East Coast, not only New York, but Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington, and even cities on the West Coast. Police estimate that between 1968 and 1975, Ike Atkinson earned $400 million, the equivalent of nearly $1 billion today. Trying to stay ahead of law enforcement, Ike continues for years to smuggle pure heroin through U.S. military bases using military aircraft. But Frank Lucas is about to bring the entire operation crashing down. June 1975. The information provided by Frank Lucas proves devastating for Ike and his organization. Thanks to Frank's cooperation, more than 100 people are convicted in 1975 alone. Frank informs on his criminal associates, his business partners, members of his own organization, and figures connected to other networks. Already charged with heroin trafficking, investigators now grasp the true scale of Ike Atkinson's empire. The smuggling operation into the United States is estimated to generate $50 million per year, and yet, outside of law enforcement, almost no one even knew it existed. After a lengthy trial, Ike pleads guilty and is sentenced to 19 years in prison. Thanks to his cooperation, Frank Lucas sees his original 70-year sentence reduced to just 6 years, and he is released in 1981. The #1 heroin dealer in Harlem, the leader of a brutal criminal gang that ruled the streets through murder and violence, who had helped bring down the true king of heroin, now walks free. There was no doubt that Frank Lucas was one of the major heroin dealers in the New York area. But when it came to controlling the heroin trade from the Golden Triangle to the streets of America, that was not his empire. Frank Lucas may have inspired American Gangster, but the real story is very different. Through his mafia connections via Bumpy Johnson, Frank became a major dealer. But he got his heroin from the real American Gangster, Leslie Ike Atkinson. Frank Lucas was nothing more than his man in New York. So what do you think? Was Frank Lucas really the heroin godfather? Or just a snitch working under the real kingpin, Leslie Ike Atkinson? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. Also, you guys don't have to sub if you don't want to sub. If it's your vibe, it's your vibe. You do you. I'm always trying to improve, so if there's anything you think I could do better, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.